Welcome to week 2 of Programming with Python. Today we're going to discuss naming variables in Python. Each programming language has its own rules for naming variables, and Python is no exception. We're going to cover the rules, and then we're also going to cover some suggestions, and by the end of this class you will understand the basics behind creating variable names that are robust and help you write better code. We're devoting an entire lesson to naming variables because it's a problem that causes a lot of bugs in beginning programmers' programs. They get the names mangled with each other. They forget what their names mean. They misspell the names. They try to use names that are invalid names. It's a very common problem when you're first starting to program before you've developed your own style of naming variables. The number one rule is readability is king. I mean that is what you want your variable names to extrude. You want the variable names to stand out and let you know exactly what that variable is all about. You are going to forget what your variables mean. You're going to forget either in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a year. You're going to forget what they mean at some point in the future. Having a style helps. In other words, if you always name your program variables using the same internal rules that you've developed for yourself, that's going to help you understand your code later on when you look at a variable name and go, okay, that must mean based on your rules. Now, the most persistent way to remember what variable means is comments. Comments are allowed in all programming languages, and they're there for the programmer and the programmer alone. They only exist in the source code, which is not, that's the code that only the programmer sees, that creates the program. And they are persistent and they're editable. Think of them as notes you take at a lecture. That's the same kind of, if you take notes at lectures, that's the same kind of idea behind comments in programming code. Uh, Having comments telling you what your variable names mean is really important. Matter of fact, for years, I've always put comments in the beginning of all my programs to tell me what each of the variables mean, what type of variable it is and what it means and what it does. Those are always at the top of my programs so that if I go to read a program 5 years later, I know what that variable means. Even though my style will help me, and maybe I might remember, yeah, maybe. The comments are the best possible method. First, let's start with Python's variable naming rules, which I call laws, because you must obey these. These are not suggestions or style tools. These are hard and fast rules that you cannot break or the program will not run. The character set that we're allowed to use for Python is all the uppercase and all the lowercase alphabet, the numbers 0 through 9, and the underscore character, which is it's the only special character we're allowed to use, and there's some special rules about using it that we're going to discuss. So we can use both the uppercase and lowercase alphabet to create variable names out of, but they are unique. A uppercase A is not equal to a lowercase a. So far with and the same is true with the rest of the alphabet. This was not true back when programming started. When programming started, it was all uppercase. There was no lowercase option for it. And then it migrated to allowing uppercase and lowercase, but it didn't differentiate between the two. Python allows both uppercase and lowercase as unique characters. The first example we have there is I'm going to create a variable name called age. Okay, AGE is all lowercase. I'm going to set it to be equal to 1. Well, then I decide later on that I want age to begin with a capital A, so it's capital AGE, and I'm going to give that a value of 2. And then I wanted the middle character to be capitalized, so AGE is, I assigned the value of 3 to. And then finally, I want it all caps. AGE all caps is 4. Stop shouting. Each of those is a unique variable, even though they say the same thing, which can get you in a little bit of trouble if you're not paying attention to it. If you type that into the Python editor, you would see that they're all unique. Age plus age plus age plus age equals 10. It doesn't equal 4. Each one is a unique value. Names cannot start with numbers is another rule that we have with Python variables. Our first example, 1040 form, the IRS tax form 1040 form, that's not allowed. That's why I put it in red there. It's not true. You can't use that as a variable name because it begins with a number. Now, the second one I can use, but wait, it starts with a number, or does it? The underscore, that special character, is not a number. It's a special character. So you could start it with underscore 1040, then underscore form, and that's allowed. We'll discuss why that is not maybe the best idea, though, later on, okay? We could say that 2 apples is true, and that would be perfectly fine. But if we used the number 2, that won't work because it begins with a number. If we wanted the variable name for India, we could say India, and that one works. But if we accidentally use the 1 character instead, which kind of looks like India, you can't do that. Same's true with Ohio. If I spell Ohio correctly with an O, that's a valid variable name. But if I accidentally used a 0 character, then it's invalid. And sometimes you can't tell the difference between a 0 and an O very well. So you have to be careful there. Now, there are reserved keywords in all computer programming languages. These are words that the programming language uses to perform its functions and operations and stuff, and you can't use them for variable names. If you ever are wondering what the list of keywords is for your implementation of Python, let's say a couple years from now, there's another version of Python. There's a very short program that I wrote there. Let me highlight what the program is. This is a program that we could type in that the first one's a comment. The # makes it a comment. This is a program to list keywords. The first line is to import keywords, which brings in another set of functions into our program. And then we have a print statement that's going to print out our keyword list. And when you run it, you end up with all the keywords you're not allowed to use. These are protected words. The reason why the first 3 are highlighted is because they begin with capital letters. That is not normal for keywords. Keywords normally begin with lowercase and very rarely a underscore. But true, false, and none are special keywords that begin with a capital letter. Okay, let's see what we've covered so far. We're going to look at this list of potential variable names and try to figure out which ones are legal variable names and which ones are not legal variable names, and which ones are really good names that follow all the rules and are easy to remember. Let's start with number 1, work order. Work order number. Okay, we're looking at that one. It's not valid. The reason why it's not valid is because that character at the end right there. That's a special character called the pound sign. It's not one of the characters we're allowed to use for variables, but more importantly, it's used for something else in Python. It's used for making comments. So you can't use that inside a variable name. Okay, we'll look at number 2. Begins with underscore area code, ends with underscore area code. That's a completely legal variable name. You can begin with underscores, you can end with underscores. It may not be the best. We'll explain a little bit later. Number 3, 10 freeway. Well, that begins with a number. We know for a fact that that's taboo right there. No numbers to begin with. Now, number 4, Python time, Python dash time. We can't use that as a variable. Again, we're looking at for special characters in this case. That sign right there is the subtraction sign, also known as the minus sign. That, the word Python would be treated as a variable, the word time would be treated as a variable, and it would try to subtract the two instead of using the whole thing as a variable. So we can't do that. Number 5 looks really freaking bizarre. However, it is perfectly legal. That is a capital I with a bunch of underscores ending with a 1. Why someone would name a variable that, I can't tell you, but it is legal. Okay, the next one, number 6, NMYBK5. Okay, well, yes, that's a legal variable name. I have no idea what it could mean, but it's a legal variable name. We go down to number 7, and we see car model. That is a legal variable name. It capitalizes the word model, and it capitalizes first letter of the word model and the first letter of car as well. That's pretty easy to understand, and it is legal. There's no special characters, does not begin with a number, is not a keyword. That's a perfectly legal variable name. Underneath it in number 8 is a very similar one, a shortening of car model. We shortened it to CarMod. Okay, well, is CarMod a name? Is it California RMOD? It could be many different things. It's a valid variable name, but maybe not as understandable as it could be. Then we look off to the right a little bit. We see letter ones, variables specified by I listed them with letters. The first one, A, is count. Count is a valid variable name. It's not a keyword. Kind of looks like a keyword though, doesn't it? It's a valid variable name. It's all lowercase. It kind of looks like a keyword, but it's not a keyword in Python. So that's a legal variable name. Letter B, class underscore return. That's 2 keywords. Class is a keyword, return is a keyword, and I've attached them to each other with an underscore. None of them are capitalized. That is a legal variable name. You can use a keyword inside a variable name, and that's completely legal as long as you're not using it all by itself. If that was just class all by itself, you couldn't use it, or return all by itself, you couldn't use it. Letter C. This one's kind of descriptive. My Aunt Lucy's birthday. Uses caps for the first character, uses underscores between the words. That is a very descriptive variable name. But are you going to want to type that 100 times? You'll probably eventually make a mistake somewhere typing it. That's quite a mouthful. Plus, it makes your program lines really long when you have super long variable names inside your program. We go to letter D, and letter D is the word pass. So that okay, this is pass number 4 or something. Can't use it. Pass, if you look at your keyword list, pass is a protected keyword. You can't use that because it's all by itself. I mean, you could use it with a capital P. You could use it by starting it with an underscore or ending it with an underscore. All we know at this point, for a fact, it's illegal to use it as a variable name all by itself. Okay, E is kind of cheating. Okay, this is a sneaky one. F underscore F would be a valid key. It would be a valid variable name, except for one problem. There is actually 4 characters there. I typed in capital F, then underscore. I hit the space bar once, and then I hit the capital F again. You can't really tell it, but there is a space there between the underscore and the second F. That would be an invalid character name. Invalid variable name. I don't know why I keep saying that. Invalid variable name. And we'll discuss why that happens coming up. The last one, letter F, is underscore 1. So it's got just the number 1 and an underscore in front of it. Well, it's a legal variable name. It could cause you problems, but it's completely legal. So, okay, so that's legal. Which ones of these? I forgot to circle. This one's illegal. This one's illegal. The rest are legal. Yeah, the rest are legal. Okay, what about those ones that are legal? Which ones are the best? Well, my vote is for car model. This is my vote right here. Make it green, huh? Car model, I believe, is the winner of this contest because it's very descriptive. It's not ambiguous. It's easy to read. It's not incredibly long. It can't really mean much of anything else. So I really like that. I wouldn't mind count very much, other than the fact that it sure looks like a keyword, and it's one of those variable names that can be overused a lot. Class return, well, it's legal, but uses two different keywords inside of it. I'm gonna try to avoid that. My Aunt Lucy's birthday, that's just ridiculous. Please don't make variables that long. That will cause you grief the rest of your programming life. Area code, well, it begins with the dash and it ends with a dash. These can cause problems sometimes. Oh, we saw the problem. We saw one of the problems right in F. F has a space right where I put that green circle. So that's one of the problems with using dashes. Car mod, this one's been shortened too much. Not really liking that one. Another one that's just completely cryptic is this is legal, but boy, you'd always have to get the right number of underscores in between the two. You'd always have to make sure that was an I, and you always have to make sure that was a 1. Yeah. My winner, I'm still thinking car model is the best variable out of all those, and it's the only really great name in this list. Now that we've covered all the actual rules for naming variables, what you absolutely cannot do, now I'm going to give you a list of suggestions of things you shouldn't probably do. They are legal, you can do them. However, they're probably going to cause you confusion and extra work and extra bugs in your programming career. So let's begin. Dangerous characters. Okay. This is true whether you are writing programs, doing essays, reading serial numbers off of items. The English language has a few bugs in it itself. We use almost the same character for the capital letter I, the small letter L, and the number 1. We use the same character for those within reason. We also use the same character for O and 0. You'll notice my zeros that I'm showing in most of my slides has a slash to it. In the beginning of computer programming, they always put a slash through the zeros so you would know the difference between a 0 and an O. I still think that's a good idea. That font is called Roboto. Every single desktop application that uses fonts has some kind of font that puts a slash through the 0. I suggest you use those when you are dealing with computer programming. Actually, there are good ones to use for almost any kind of writing because O's and zeros mean different things. So below are some examples of different fonts. I forget which font is which, but there's one font there. We can see to the left side, those are the dangerous characters. To the right side is how we fix them. The first one is capital I, lowercase l, 1, O, and 0. And the one to the right is the exact same thing, except we changed the capital I to a small I. We changed the lowercase l to a uppercase L. And then we changed the letter O to a lowercase o. And now you can tell the letters a lot different. You can tell the two variable names are different a heck of a lot better than you could before. And the next four are just different fonts. And you'll see how different fonts separate things differently, and how when you try to improve them, how much improvement you really get out of them. But yeah, stay away from putting dangerous characters in variable names. It's figure out something else to do. It will cause you grief in the future. It's not a question of if it will cause you grief, it will cause you grief. So we go to our next item on the agenda. It's acronyms for your information. Okay, when you put acronyms in variable names, always leave them capitalized. Don't use lowercase for acronyms. Work order number, capital W, capital O. That is a better name than 1UM. Oh, wow, I won a UM. No. You didn't win a UM. You created a variable name that's hard to read. The second one is the General Motors part number versus GMPNC, Grand Mexico part names. I don't know, whatever. Could be many different things. Whereas if I keep the acronyms in uppercase, it's very easy to see that that's a General Motors part number. HTTP, you'll see that in a lot of different things. It's a hypertext transfer protocol. You'll notice that every time you see it, it's generally, when you see it in text, it's generally uppercase. And you should leave it uppercase if you're using it in your variables, because as you can see, to a comparison, if you don't make it capitalized, it doesn't pop out at you. Actually, the word pop does pop out at you right in the middle, and pop means something totally different when it comes to internet transfer protocols. So keep your acronyms capitalized. I kept saying that underscores are a special case. Yeah, they are a special case, and I would try to minimize the amount you use underscores. And they're pretty. They can really separate words very well. But one, it's additional typing for you that you don't have to do. It can have some other meanings, and it can also actually trip you up. Okay, our first example here is You could use the letter, not the letter, the character. You use the character underscore as a variable all by itself. Hey, it's not a number, so you can use it as a variable. You know, just like you could use a as a variable, a equals 5. You could use underscore equals 5. This is legal. Some people use it. They use it for what we refer to as junk variables or trash variables. It's a variable you're going to use for a very short time, and then you're going to discard it. It's an inconsequential variable. I don't like it because if you look off to the right of that line, there is a legal equation. Underscore equals x plus underscore. That looks more like a freaking test question on a 5th grade math test than it does a computer program line. So I really don't like using it in that context, for that context. Another thing that some programmers use that I don't necessarily think is that useful is if you want to use a keyword as a variable, you can end it with the underscore. And this is a common style. This is a common style of naming variables that a lot of experienced programmers use. They put the underscore at the end. That means it's no longer a keyword. It is a variable instead. For now, stay away from using underscores at the end of your variable name for keyword, to be able to reuse a keyword. Maybe later on, when you're an experienced programmer and that comes to second nature to you, you might like doing it. I'm not a big fan. Yeah, our next case down here is a name. Oh, okay, here we go. I'm going to read the screen to you guys. A name prefix with an underscore, e.g. spam, should be treated as a non-public part of the API, whether it is a function, method, or data member. It should be considered an implementation detail and subject to change without notice. PEP 8. Okay. Python's update rules are all called PEPs. It means Python Enhancement Protocol. When they come out with a new feature for Python, first they have proposals, and it becomes a PEP, and that's it's a guideline, a rule, a reason why they've changed something. They say that if a word begins with an underscore, it should be treated as a non-public part of the application programming interface, whether it's a function, a method, or a data member. It should be considered an implementation detail, and here's the important part: subject to change without notice. In other words, the people who develop Python are saying that you need to kind of be careful, subject to change without notice. I don't like starting variables with variable names with underscores. You can do it. Just be aware that it may not be in your best interest in the long run. The next one down is double underscores. You'll see in documentation a lot of times double underscores as variable names, and they are specials. One, the Python interpreter handles these differently, and it does what's called name mangling to them to avoid conflicts with other modules that may be loaded into your programming environment. For now, certainly stay away from double underscores unless otherwise specified. They create bugs that they're going to be very hard to catch sometimes. Treat them, only use them when you are told to use them. When something explicitly tells you to use double underscore in a variable name. The big reason behind all variable naming conventions, though, is readability. We mentioned that right when we started. Variable names have to be readable and understandable. And sometimes underscores can make it less readable. And okay, style suggestions, style suggestion tips. Okay, the title is actually a little bit of a joke there itself. Style suggestion tips in the title there. Let's grab a pen and red. Let's see, where is it? Oh, it's right here. There's a hidden space there. That has no spaces in it except right where I put that red circle. There's a space there. There's no space here. There's not a space there. I'd mentioned that earlier, that sometimes underscores can hide spaces. You can't have spaces in variable names. It makes two total separate variables or two total separate keywords or whatever. There's no spaces allowed in variable names, function names, anything like that. But anyway, underscores can hide spaces, as we just saw above. Okay, there's a way to get around separating your words with underscores. It's called camel style. Camel style is where you capitalize every word in a variable name. Camel style avoids that. You can read each of the words clearly without any underscores. It doesn't make the variable any longer. You can still read it real well. I prefer camel style to putting underscores, with an exception. Okay. We'll cover that exception right now. Okay. Right here. There is something called constants. Constants are variables, quote unquote, that don't actually change. Pi is a constant, 3.1415926, whatever, it goes on and on forever. Number of states in the United States is 50. That can be a constant. Number of days in the year can be a constant. Something that's not going to change, but your program needs to use it, and you'd rather have it as a name in your program rather than just a number, because some numbers are completely non-understandable, the number itself, whereas if you replace it with a name, it suddenly makes sense. Gosh, was it 535 people in Congress? So you keep putting the number 535 all the way through your program, or you could have a constant called Congress, all caps. Okay, constants should always be capitalized for style. All the letters in a constant are capitalized. Because of that, if you pull out the underscores between the words, you can't make it camel style. So everything's going to just run into each other. So it'll just be one long run-on sentence with no spaces in it. That's one really good reason for using underscores is constants, constant variables. When they're all caps, you should use underscores to separate them. Going back up one step is keywords are all lowercase words except true, false, and none. There's a little exception there, but keywords in general are all lowercase words, and usually most people's functions are in lowercase. And when you import modules, a lot of their functions are in lowercase. That's why I kind of like always using camel style for variable names, because they're not lowercase. They have an uppercase to begin with. I did explain what camel style means, right? It goes up and down and up and down and up. Every time you hit a capital, it goes up and down. I guess you could call it wave style also, but the name that stuck with it's called camel style. I like using camel style variable names because I know that they're not keywords, and I know they're not normally they're not functions. I don't have to type any more than I normally type anyway. if I added underscores, I would have to type more, and my lines would get longer. My source code would get longer. So I like camel style. Now, the shorter a variable name is, the better it is, as long as it's understandable. Okay. YR for year, the letter Y and R for year. And, I guess we could go YR. Hey, I can write on my screen. YR as a variable name, everyone's going to understand that's year, right? But if they just put in Y, they may not. Matter of fact, they may think it's a lot of different things if it's the letter Y. When you use single letter variables are the quickest to type in. They shrink your source code, but they're not understandable in general. So you should always have a comment that describes that variable before you use it in your program. Put a comment saying that Y equals the current year or something like that, if that's what you're going to use it for. Natively, though, Y is an axis in the Cartesian coordinate system. It's X goes that way and Y goes that way and Z comes towards you. So that's another reason why you should certainly comment it and explain why you're using it and what it means. X, Y, Z, I, J, K, C, and some other letters have special meanings to mathematics. X, Y, Z are Cartesian coordinates. I, J, K are vectors. C is used for lots of different things. So if you're going to use single letters, which, hey, I love using single letters, but I always comment them to tell myself later on what that letter X means in this particular program. Okay. Well, that was it for my suggestions as far as variable naming, and of course all the rules that Python puts on variable naming. We need to always remember that readability is king. The major point you should consider when assigning a variable name is that it is meaningful, readable, and you're going to understand it later on. Because you will forget. Having a style of variable naming helps, and comments will force you to remember. Now, tell us, why would print be a poor name? Well, print is a keyword, and this print here on line number 1, that begins with a capital P, so it's technically legal. Well, it may be a legal variable name, but print with a capital P is used in another common programming language, and it's easy to get confused with the print in Python. It's just not a good idea. Don't use keywords even if you change them a little bit. Try to maintain a little bit of separation there. For the same reason, lowercase true is a poor name, even though it is a valid variable name because it begins with a lowercase t and the keyword begins with an uppercase T. It's going to be too easy to get confused, and you're going to either make a mistake with the variable or a mistake with the keyword. Just leave it alone. What could go wrong with underscore user as a variable name? Well, Python itself, PEP8, says that it may be changing at some point in the future, and it's telling you that it could be tied into other modules and things. And we know that underscores sometimes hide spaces. I would just stay away from leading a variable name with an underscore. Now, if you needed to create a variable name for class number 105, what would you use? Well, you could use class number 185 just like it's printed by pulling out the spaces, but it'd be one big run-on sentence. It'd be kind of readable. You can make it camel style by going capital C and capital N and then 105, and that would be a good one, pretty good. Seems to be a bit long though. Maybe I would go capital C in class, and then I would go capital N UM, and then small UM 105, would shorten it by 3 more characters, class num. Or you can even go class NO, maybe even class N 105. Any of those work. Try to aim for short yet readable. Now, you need a variable name for license number. What is the problem? Well, the L in license number is lowercase, and that looks exactly like a 1. So you don't want to use that. You'd make that a capital L. Correct. You make a capital L, you could do many different things. I wouldn't go for the full license number, all those characters. I would go for like capital L, small IC, capital NUM. That'd be fine. Everyone's going to understand that license number. That might be a good one. Now, if you want to use X as a name, why should you make a comment about what it means? Well, X has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. It's a mathematical symbol right off the bat. It's used for the x-axis and Cartesian coordinates. It's used for the unknown variable in lots of different equations. If you're going to use X in a program, go ahead and comment it. I actually use it quite often, but I normally use it as x-axis, but that's a different story entirely. So put a comment on it so you know what it means. Now, what did we cover? Okay. All your variable names should be meaningful. Okay. Come up with your own style and create names that are meaningful and non-ambiguous. All your characters must be alphabet, numbers, or the underscore. Never start a variable name with a number. Be careful for keywords. Avoid the danger characters, dangerous characters, 0, O, capital I, small l, and number 1. Don't use them in variable names. And style and comments are your friends when it comes to naming variables. Always have a style and always leave comments if you can.